You're looking for a microphone that can compare to the Shure SM7B but at a much lower price point? Enter the Rode Pocmic. This is a dynamic XLR microphone that not only sounds good but looks good as well and comes in under $100. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the microphone and also do some sound testing so you can see if this is the microphone for you. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Shotgun Studio, and today we are taking a look at both of these microphones in front of me, which are the Rode Pocmics. I have them running into the Rodecaster Pro, and all audio that you're going to hear throughout this video will be coming from these Rode Pocmics so you can see how they sound. I bought the Rode Pocmic because I had the Rodecaster Pro, and they're basically made to go together. The Rodecaster Pro does have a preset setting for the Podmic, which makes it easy to set up, and you don't really have to do any audio processing, which you can get at other dynamic microphones, but you may have to adjust the levels and some of the audio processing features to get a good sound quality out of them. So one thing that was appealing to these microphones for me was, one, the look, because I wanted something that was cool and not just a boring black microphone that you see a lot of. I love the Shure SM7B, but it is just kind of boring, whereas this Rode Pocmic just has a cool visual appeal to it. And so I got it for that, and I liked it so much that I ended up buying a second one. So I use both of these on not only our podcasts that we do, but also YouTube videos, and they sound great. So going over the build quality of this microphone is unlike a lot of microphones today. This one is all metal. So the outer casing, the metal mesh here, this swing arm, and even these knobs are all metal. So it is a great build quality for the price point that it's in. It does have some weight to it. It comes in over just a couple pounds. And when you feel it compared to some other microphones, there is quite a bit of a weight difference. But to me, that just shows that it has an excellent build quality and something I want to go with versus a cheaper, lighter plastic microphone. I feel like these are going to hold up a lot better. Another cool feature about this mic is you do not need an adapter. It comes with both a 3/8 and 5/8 thread, so you can thread it on a regular microphone or even a boom arm without having to search for an adapter. So right here are some technical specs of the microphone itself. You'll see it is a dynamic microphone with a cardioid polar pattern, and the frequency range is 20 Hertz to 20 kilohertz with an XLR only output. And then also down here, you will see the sensitivity range. And another cool thing about this microphone is, unlike USB mics that take phantom power, this does not take any extra phantom power. Whereas with the Rodecaster Pro, it's just a quick flip of a button for that phantom power, but it is not needed. Unless you decide to run it through a fathead to give it a little bit of extra gain, then you will need to turn on that phantom power. But if you're using just the microphone itself, that is not needed. So going over the sound quality of this microphone, they do come with a built-in pop filter and built-in shock mount. So you don't need an external shock mount like you see on some other microphones. It's all kind of built in, and that might also play into the weight of the microphone as well. But with the built-in pop filter, it's okay. I still get some plosives without a windscreen. So that's why I went ahead and got a windscreen just to kind of see what the sound difference is. It's minimal, and as long as you're not speaking directly into the microphone, if you speak off to the side of it and kind of let the wind go off the top, then you won't get those plosives. But having this windscreen helps with that, but takes away the visual appeal of the microphone. So I don't really use this for the podcast. I would only use this if I'm doing something audio only. And so we'll go ahead and test out the plosives and see what they sound like. So with the windscreen on, Peter Piper pitched a podcast. And switching over to the microphone without a windscreen with just a built-in pop filter, Peter Piper pitched a podcast. So I'm talking directly into the microphone, but then if I kind of come over to the side, Peter Piper pitched a podcast. So let me know how that sounds. It's kind of hard to hear in my headphones, but I don't notice it too much. So one last thing on the sound quality of these microphones is they are on the gain heavy side. You absolutely do not need to have any sort of cloud lifter or Triton fathead like I have here, but it does kind of help. You'll notice when you have the gain turned up, especially on your audio interface like the Rode Pocmic, which doesn't have the best headphone preamps, you'll get a lot of kind of hissing noise in your headphones. It doesn't transfer to the final product of your audio, but it is something that you're going to hear in your headphones. So that's why I decided, since we did do a long podcast and are like over 20 episodes in, that got kind of annoying. So I went ahead and tried the Triton FET heads, and they work great. They add an extra 20 decibels, so you can actually turn it down. So right now I have this one turned up about 45 gain. Sometimes, depending on who's speaking, will be about 45 or even up to about 50. And that's when you really start hearing that buzzing in your headphones, and it's kind of annoying. This one over here, we are running on the Triton FET head with the extra 20 decibel gain, and you'll see I have the levels around 30 instead of 45. So it does help, and I'm not getting any sort of buzzing in my headphones or anything like that. So it does help, but it is not necessary. And you'll see right here where I have the phantom power turned on. That is because the Triton FET head does require phantom power. The Rode Pocmic doesn't, but if you are running it through some sort of cloud lifter or anything like that, you may need to add phantom power. And going back to how I said this microphone was really made to go with the Rodecaster Pro, you'll see if you go into the microphone setting right here where you select what type of microphone you're using, all these presets right here are made for Rode microphones, and they have the first one right here with the Rode Podmic. The Rode Podmic came out around the same time the Rodecaster Pro did, so again, they were made kind of to go together. So anytime I use the Rode Podmic, I select the Podmic option, and that's going to give you the best sound quality for the microphone without having to do any manual adjustments. The only negative to this microphone is it is a little on the higher end, and there's not a whole lot of bass. So this microphone that I'm talking into right now with the windscreen, I have the bass turned up. And this microphone over here, I don't have any audio processing going on, and you see that it's not quite as deep as the other one. So a quick fix to that is to go into your settings for that microphone. So we're gonna go back into this one right here, go to audio processing, choose this option right here, and you'll see it's called the big bottom. For some reason, Rode calls their bass the big bottom. So you'll see right here, this is where you can adjust the bass and add that in so you get that little bit of lower end on this Podmic. So this is actually what it sounds like with no bass turned on. And then this is what it sounds like with the bass all the way up. And this is about the middle. So this other one right here, I have it at about 62. So this one right here, we will go ahead and turn down just a little bit just so you can hear a difference. But that is where you can fix that kind of negative on these microphones. You can add that bassier sound, or big bottom as Rode calls it. So switching back over to the microphone with the Triton FET head on it, you'll see again, I like to keep my levels right around 15. So with this one, our gain is again right about 30, whereas the other one, I'm at about 45. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of compare this to some other microphones. The first one we're going to compare it to is obviously the Shure SM7B. I have one here. I did not pay the $400 for it. I bought mine used on Facebook Marketplace, but I bought it just because, you know, if you're in podcasting, you have to have the Joe Rogan microphone. But I still use these Rode Podmics in every podcast. Either myself or a guest will use them. So this is the Rode Podmic with the Triton FET head and the windscreen on it. And now you are listening to the Shure SM7B. On this SM7B, I don't have any audio processing turned on, so you're getting the raw sound of the Shure SM7B running into the Rodecaster Pro. I'm also using a Triton FET head on the Shure SM7B because it is very gain heavy, almost so gain heavy that you really don't want to use it without some sort of gain booster, because it's going to be really quiet and you do get that noise in your headphones. But this is the Shure SM7B right here. And this is going back to the Rode Pocmic with the bass turned up a little bit. And then this is the other Rode Pocmic without the windscreen and the bass turned down to how it was normally set. So let me know how the different sounds. This is the regular Podmic without the windscreen. And then this is the Shure SM7B. So is this really worth $400, or can you get the same sound or even a better sound from this microphone out of the Rode Podmic? In my headphones, this one sounds actually a little bit bassier. I think I turned the bass up on a podcast I did recently, so it does have a little bit more boost on that big bottom. But let's try a different microphone that's in an even lower price point. So right here, I have the Samson Q2U, and this is another great microphone. This is actually the first microphone that I started a podcast with. I bought 2 of these, and the reason was I didn't have the Rode Caster Pro, so I needed a USB capable microphone to hook directly up into our computer. And the cool thing about this is it's not only USB capable, but also XLR. So if you end up getting an audio interface, you can still use it as well. And not only that, but you get all the cables. You get a USB cable, you get the XLR cable, and even a microphone stand for $70. So you get a lot more with the Samson Q2U than you do with the Rode Podmic, which is just under $100, and you get the Rode Podmic, and that's it. It doesn't come with any sort of cables or anything like that, just the microphone itself. Whereas the Samson, you get that whole package for $70. So let's go ahead and plug the Samson in. So you'll see I'm going to go ahead and go into the audio settings of the Rodecaster Pro. I'm going to put it on mic 1. And since we are no longer going to be using the Rode Podmic, I'm just going to select the generic dynamic microphone. And we will get that turned on. And you do need, with this one, since it is USB, you will need phantom power. And this is the Samson Q2U microphone. I'm going to go ahead and turn the gain up a little bit more to about 40, just so I'm getting into around that 15 mark on the Rodecaster Pro. So phantom power, if you don't know, is just basically running power into the microphone. So it's kind of like if you're plugging in something to the wall, it just needs a little bit of extra juice. So that's what phantom power is. Whereas if you're using just an XLR only mic, it doesn't require any extra power or anything. So you don't need to turn that phantom power option on. But this is the Samson Q2U, another dynamic microphone coming in under the price of the Rode Podmic. So let me know how this sounds compared to the Rode Podmic. This is the one with the booster on it. And then I will switch over right now to the regular Podmic. So now we are back on the regular Rode Podmic. So again, see how that sounds compared to the Samson Q2U microphone. So if you are looking into getting one of these Rode Podmics for yourself, just know that it is different based on your voice. So your voice might sound even more bassier than mine does on it just in general, or it may sound higher. So depending on your voice, you may have to mess with some of the audio settings in whatever interface you're using. If you have a higher voice and running it through the Rodecaster Pro, you're going to have to boost up that big bottom. On our podcast, I do have a guest that speaks pretty quiet, and I had, before I ended up buying the Triton Fethead to gain that boost, I had him turned all the way up, and he was still not coming in at the levels I needed. So I actually ended up having to switch him over to the Shure SM7B with that even turned up even more with that extra gain. And then another thing about these microphones is, since they are dynamic, what that means is it's going to try and pick up directly what's in front of you while trying to reduce the noise that's around you. So you really do want to speak directly into these microphones versus a condenser microphone like a Neat Worker B, which I've done a separate review on here. And we have another guest who likes to move around a lot. So that's microphone's good for him because it's going to pick up him more if he's speaking around the microphone or even moving back and forth. Whereas with this microphone, you have to stay pretty close to it, because if you move kind of far away, you see that you start losing some of that sound. And then even if you start going on either side of the microphone, again, you start losing that volume as well. So if you do get one of these microphones, since it is dynamic, make sure you talk directly into the microphone pretty close. I like to have it to where I'm about a fist away from the microphone. You can boost the gain a little bit to get yourself further apart, but then you might run into picking up some other stuff around you. So just keep that in mind. If you do like to move around a lot or keep a big distance away from you, then you might consider getting some sort of condenser microphone, but then you're also going to run the risk of picking up, say, like fan noise or anything like that that might be around you. So these dynamic microphones really do help give you that cool podcast sound, whereas the condenser mics aren't going to be quite as bassy. But I do have a video right here that I'll post a link to on the Neat Worker Bee, which sounds pretty good. And that also comes in around the $70 price point. But that one does need phantom power to run through and is XLR only. So for the money, these are great sounding microphones. And again, they just add that cool visual appeal to your video versus just like a black microphone or something. If you have to have this big windscreen on, it just kind of takes it away. So again, you really don't need that windscreen on the Rode Pocmic. It sounds fine without it. Just make sure you're not speaking directly into it to kind of help those P's maybe speak off to the side, just so you don't get that wind going directly into the microphone. It kind of goes off it and helps with those plosives. But if you are interested in these, I do have a link down below to the Rode Podmics. I'll also include a link to the Rodecaster Pro that I have here and these Triton Fet heads. These are awesome. They are cheaper than the Cloud Lifters. The Cloud Lifter is kind of a known gain booster, but they are a lot more expensive, and you need another cable to run through those as well, whereas this just plugs directly into the back of the Rodecaster Pro, and you only need one XLR cable. So and I love the sound of them. They're a lot slimmer. They don't get in the way. So I will post a link to these because these are awesome if you do decide to use a Triton Fet head or some sort of gain booster for these microphones. But again, not needed. I just did it because we do get that sound in our microphones, but we're also running 4 different microphones. So when you have that, you are going to get a little bit of that extra noise in your headphones just from all the extra microphones. And if you guys like this type of video, check out our other videos here where we go over other microphones, including this Samsung Q2U. Thanks for watching.